The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acomb. We're broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and it's time to talk. It's hard to believe. Board of Education vote coming up on May 19th. Zachary, thanks so much for being on the program.
Welcome. Thanks for having me here.
Well, this is, it's hard to believe. May 19th. And you've been working pretty hard?
Week from today.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe your background.
So my background, I have 15 years law enforcement experience. Also own a business in the Heights, Pugh Self-Protection and Combatives, a whole bunch of safety training related. Some of it is school specific. Been running that since 2015. Been living in the Heights since 2018. Started out in the city of Elmira and then moved into the Heights. And been there since. I'm raising my family there. I have a son that's approaching a year, and obviously he'll be in the Heights School District here in the near future.
Is that one of the reasons that drove you?
Yes, partly, yes.
Yeah. Well, tell us why. I shouldn't put words in your mouth. Tell me why you decided to run for, because it's kind of a thankless job. People talk about it. It really is.
I know it's not paid.
Yeah, right. Is that your first decision? We want to be paid?
Yeah, no, that's fair. Unpaid position, obviously volunteer, but it obviously is a very important position, or very important positions. I'm running strictly on the safety side. That's my platform. Obviously, budget is important and all that, but you can't have a education and people aren't safe or feel safe and actually be prepared. So I noticed some deficiencies with the Heights School District that I have addressed before, and they've mentioned before, and they haven't addressed them. So that's why I'm running to hopefully be able to rectify some of those things. The ones I'm willing to disclose that really somebody can't exploit. There's some that I'm not going to mention because obviously somebody could exploit them. One is everybody sees is the emergency labeling system. So if you look on all the entrances to both Cohen and Edison School District, large numbers on their doors designed to assist first responders responding to an emergency which way they should be going or meeting people. However, two main buildings in the district, they're labeled differently. One's clockwise, one's counterclockwise. Oh, wow. So that can obviously huge liability financially for the taxpayers. If God forbid something happened and they sue, saying, "Hey, why do you have two different systems in the same district?" And then obviously even more important is the safety of the people that are trying to get the first responders there. If it's taking them longer because the person's used to seeing Edison, knowing it's labeled one way, but then they get to Cohen and it's labeled the other way. So. Obviously, seconds matter. A lot of these medical emergencies, act of violence and whatnot. So there's that is a big one. Also, it doesn't meet the. There was a law passed in 2022, I believe it was, regarding school standardization of labeling, and it doesn't meet those requirements.
Have they ever given you a reason why? Is it just because it's always been done this way, or
no? So it go during the public comment period, and there's really no debate. It's just you air what you want to say, and then that's basically it. So there was that I mentioned. I know that if anybody seen that there's blue lights outside that school. A lot of the schools in the area have, and they use this pretty much the same brand of system for lockdown alerts. Okay. So the flashing, if the blue light is flashing, it means there's a lockdown. However, people don't know that. There's just a simple blue light there. And I've asked people, I had a meeting with some school officials there that wanted to meet with me. And I said, "Do you know what that light is?" They go, "We didn't even know there's one there." Because I go, "We're inside the building." Yeah. I said, "Well, obviously it's, during a lockdown. But imagine if you have a visitor or somebody that's not familiar with it and that light's flashing. Yeah. A lockdown is a very serious event. It means there's somebody trying to hurt people inside the building. Right. You don't want somebody inadvertently walking into that type of situation. So there's a school district I've worked with or whatnot. They put, they took my suggestion. They put signs up now. It says, "When flashing, buildings in lockdown, move to a safe location. No entries allowed." Yeah. So something like that. And again, they're just.
Yeah, I would have had no idea what the blue light is for.
Nobody does. That's why we should put a sign up to let them know that, hey, this is a life-threatening event going on. So those are the main issues, I see. That I can disclose, but there are some other ones that obviously if I told them, somebody could exploit those, and I'm not going to allow for that. Not.
But I mean, this is your background.
Yes.
So that's your passion and the reason why you're running for the Board of Election is because if you see these glaring errors, for lack of a better word, you want to get them fixed. Like you said, every second counts.
Absolutely.
So and like you said, heaven forbid someone walks into a situation. So it only makes sense as your message. I know you didn't have to get a ton of signatures, but when you're talking to people about running for the Board of Election or Board of Education, has it gotten a good response?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I was talking to I said I'm running on a safety platform. I mentioned the labeling. They're like, "Oh, I noticed the signs." I said, "You notice they're different?" And they're like, "What do you mean?" And they're like, "No, we didn't know that." Yeah. And obviously, unfortunately, most deficiencies aren't known until something bad happens. So we want to fix those ahead of time so that there is no, oops, we should have thought of that.
Now, what does the vote itself look like? Because I know it's a little bit different maybe than other Board of Education votes that people have had. Because you've got, what is it? You've got 3 candidates running for 2 positions?
Yes. I believe they call it an at-large. So basically the top two people get the number of votes get the 2 seats. There's one that's a full 3-year term, and then one it looks like it's a partial. It's only a 1-year term. So basically, whoever gets the most votes gets the 3-year term. The second place gets the 1-year term, and then the third place doesn't get anything.
Well, that's how it works, I guess. When you look back, other than the safety issue, obviously you're kind of learning on the go, like so many people do in this position. What do you hear from the people that you've talked with, or just in your day-to-day life, other than the safety issue, issues facing the Board of Elections?
I hear rising healthcare costs is huge. I believe it was the Heights. I think I was talking to some school staff members there. They were saying that 14 positions, people are retiring, and they're not going to fill those. They're not cutting any positions, but they're not going to fill those because they said the citing cost. I can't remember what their exact number was. I think it was like 20% or something they were going to increase. And they said some area school districts are even above that. So, looking at different things there, I know they had said that, they'd been with one healthcare company forever and they haven't looked at other options. I'm like, well, why not? They're like, well, we don't know. I'm like, does the board know about this? They're like, well, we don't know. It's like, we got to have that communication between the people that are on the ground the day to day to say, hey, listen, here are the issues we're facing, and then let the board determine, the priority of, hey, is this going to hurt us in the long run? Why is the rising healthcare cost? What are some solutions to that? Can we put it out for a bid? Because right now, I was talking to people, it sounds like there's no bid. It's just this is the company we've always used.
Wow.
It's like, well, let's get a list of what
think outside the box.
Yeah, let's think of what coverage we need instead of just saying, hey, give us the lowest healthcare plan.
Right.
This is the coverage we need, and then bid that out. Who can provide that coverage? Right. For the cheapest, rate for the taxpayers.
Well, and that's why there's something to be said about bringing fresh eyes to the board. In your scenario, you see that and you say, how can we change it? Because it's any board is like that. We've always done it this way, so why would we change it now? But sometimes you have to. And I know this year the tax levy increased 2.2%. I haven't heard a lot of scuttlebutt about huge reaction one way or the other. But in the past, how those conversations can go when they start talking school budgets. And we got to cut here, we got to cut here. So if there are some very viable options, why not go that direction?
Absolutely. And try to get ahead of it, because obviously you don't want to have 1 year where all of a sudden, boom, hey, healthcare costs are rising X percentage, and that throws us all into a loop, making sure that the reserves are there and that we're making sure that the dollar goes as far as it can with the projects. I know they were just redoing the roofs recently, which obviously that's something you got to plan. Hey, this is good for another 30 years, but in that 30 years, we got to plan to spend a lot of money to keep our infrastructure up to date. And
well, what has the reaction been when you've talked to people? Because I kind of put words in other people's mouths saying that I haven't heard a lot about, specifically at Elmira Heights Central School District. But do people seem receptive to the budget?
I haven't heard anybody complain, and I'm sure the inflation and cost of living has been more than 2% in the last year. So me personally, I think that's completely acceptable. You look at prices of groceries, gasoline, and all that; they've gone up well above 2%. So I think that's definitely fair and reasonable. Especially to keep, sounds like the status quo so far is good overall in terms of programming, student success and academics. So it doesn't sound like they're cutting anything out to keep that 2%. So that sounds like that's good.
The thing that concerns me, and this isn't just Elmira Heights Central School District, this is every school district in New York State. Without the New York State budget being passed yet, it was due April 1st. This budget, this is not just Elmira Heights, this is everyone. This looks good, but boy, that could be a rude awakening if they don't get the funding they think they're going to get from the state. Yeah,
because all the budget is just planned off of what proposed funding is.
Exactly.
I think it's what expected from last year with a 1% increase. That's what they're expected to get. Well, if New York just says, hey, we're not going to do that and we're going to change this, then obviously that's going to be you're going to have to make it up next year, because obviously this budget's going to pass.
Yeah,
we're going to have to figure out next year, what do we do if there's a major hit?
It's just a crazy scenario, and I don't envy the people that have to put together the budget when you don't see those numbers. Now, have you heard anything? Because on this program we talk a lot, whether it's Assemblyman Phil Palmisano or so many people about the EV buses and the problem with buses. I know Proposition 2 is the purchase of school buses. It's one 65-passenger school bus at a cost not to exceed $193,000, and one 65-passenger school bus at a cost not to exceed $187,000 and some change. Have you gotten any reaction to that?
I haven't I know overall when the buses pass, people don't know the area. They don't know New York State. They listen, these buses in the winter, batteries don't last as good when it's charging.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, the people that came up with this probably don't understand school buses and how they work. Right. They just think, you have X amount of charge. It's like, well, how long does it take to charge? School gets back at this time. They have X amount of hours before the next time. But what about, field trips? What about after-school activities?
Any away games,
You know,
they've got to be over,
Yeah,
right?
and where are you going to charge if you don't have a, not necessarily, that place might not have a charging station that you can use, or, you're going to, the neighboring, or, the school that you go to for the sporting event, are they going to let you use their chargers? 'Cause
Right. That's a cost.
I've seen, some school districts come out and say that, I don't know, it's astronomically different, but they're like, oh yeah, the cost of the, diesel bus costs us X amount of cents, it seems, per mile,
Yeah.
where, the EV is dollars per mile. So, I mean, schools aren't just going to necessarily give that to the neighboring school district to use your.
No, and it's going to be interesting to see how that goes just in our area in general, because I believe it was even Ithaca of all places last year, the year before, shut down the EV bus proposition because these costs are so exorbitant. It's not anybody in the school district's fault.
No.
It's the rules that were put in place. But when you're talking 193,000 here, 100, that adds up.
Yeah, and I think these are just diesel buses.
Yeah.
The EV ones are even more
they're
expensive.
crazy. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like that when you look at, I want to say, well, I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I don't want to guess. But that's just that's the cheap end of this. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes, because there ends up being, I think, 5 props, I want to say, for you guys to vote.
I believe
for.
there are. Yes. Yep. There's the technology buses, the main budget, and all that. But yeah.
So before we go, kind of the big talk is how do you get people out to vote? This is always an issue with school budgets, because you're coming up on May 19th, Thomas A. Edison High School Gymnasium, 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. How do you get people out to vote?
I mean, people got to take pride in, their school or whatnot. Just because things are going well right now and you don't have any complaints doesn't mean you should go out and vote.
Right.
Go out and vote. If you like what you're doing, vote for the people that you want, that think is going to keep things the same. If, like I said, my safety, platform is safety. If you think there are safety issues, or if I've, caught your attention that, I didn't think of that, that's huge, come out and vote for me. Right. That's what we're trying to do to, progress, look into the future, make things safer, make the students make sure they have a good education, because they go hand in hand. You can't have an education if it's not safe.
Exactly.
And vice versa.
How do people either find out more about you or can help your campaign?
Talk to their neighbors. If they're going to go out and vote, talk to neighbors. Hey, you guys voting? Let's all go together.
Sure.
The Heights is small enough. I'm walking distance from there. A lot of people, can walk a few blocks to get there. It is noted. Didn't mention though that voting times did change. It's not as early. So yeah, it starts at 11 a.m. now, like you said.
Yeah.
Before, I think it started like at 6 a.m. or something. It was a lot earlier. They cut it down. So if you usually go out before work or whatnot, don't let that discourage you when you get there and says it doesn't start till 11. Come back after work or whatnot, and vote. I mean, it is important to do. Unfortunately, there's usually low turnouts for these until there is something bad on the, something that gets people upset. That brings people out. Same thing with the board meetings. I've gone to several board meetings. I maybe one of. Sometimes I've been there by myself, as far as public, showing up. There may be sometimes some other people there, and usually they have something to say or do that's bothering them, versus just going to learn and understand, what the status of things are. And
by the time it bothers them, it's almost too late because they didn't go to the meetings before. Yeah. That's the irony of it all.
Like they always say, right? If you don't go out and vote, then you can't complain about what happens later.
Exactly. Tuesday, May 19th at Thomas A. Edison High School Gymnasium. Polls open 11 a.m. and it runs till 8 p.m. Zachary, thanks so much for being on the program. Best of luck.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this.